Welcome back to the show, everyone. Let's get Rachel Maddow's take on the No Kings marches and some other topics on her June 16, 2025 show.
And thanks to you at home for joining us here this hour. Really happy to have you here. Telling people not to go didn't work. Warning people not to go didn't work. Trying to intimidate people not to go, that definitely didn't work. Even a good faith, earnest, here's a really good reason not to go, kind of cajoling, that did not work either. Turns out we learned definitively in these past few days that people want to protest against this president a lot. And no matter what you tell them, they are going to do it. And a lot of people have been wrong about that, including me. I sat here last week, all earnest and serious, telling you, as if it was true, that there definitely was going to be no protest in Washington, D.C. this weekend, that protesters would be everywhere else in the country, but they definitely wouldn't be in Washington, D.C. Boy, I was wrong. The No Kings protest organizers had in fact said no, they were not going to protest in Washington. They were going to protest everywhere else but there. But plenty of people protested there in very large numbers. And it wasn't just the No Kings organizers who were saying, oh, we're not going to D.C., don't go to D.C. You might remember last week, Trump tried to threaten people against protesting in Washington this weekend. He said last week that if anybody sort of, dared show up to protest against his big birthday military parade, they'd be met with big and very heavy force, trying to intimidate people into not protesting. Turns out that didn't work. Regular Americans said, you know what? We're not listening to any of you. We're Americans and we have the right to protest, and that comes from our Constitution and not from any of you. And so get out of the way. We don't care. We're protesting. Lots of people protested in Washington this weekend, and there were no problems associated with it. Protesters mostly did bug out of D.C. before the actual military parade started. The military parade itself turned out to have really thin crowds. In some places along the parade route, there was almost nobody in the stands. Everybody in the president seemed kind of, I don't know, a little bored, maybe a little disappointed. I don't know. Ta-da, it just wasn't a big thing that President Trump put on for $45 million. But they got plenty of protesters when people, including me, said they wouldn't be there. You might have seen headlines last week about the Brevard County, Florida sheriff last week who called a press conference to threaten that he would sick dogs on people, and his officers would not just put people in jail, they would put people in the hospital. He literally got up at a press conference and said, "We will kill you," talking about violence he expected at any anti-Trump protests in Brevard County, Florida. After that bizarre show of intimidation from that sheriff in Brevard County, Florida, turns out people in Brevard County, Florida were not at all intimidated by what he said. As you can see from local headlines like this one, quote, "No Kings anti-Trump protests draw thousands in Brevard County in Cocoa and Palm Bay." I mean, the sheriff gets out there and says, "We will kill you." And Brevard County, Florida is like, you know what? We got a right to protest. We have a right to make protest signs of any kind, including ones that show Donald Trump in a big wig made up like Marie Antoinette, saying, "Let them eat cake." And you are not going to stop us from doing it. We are Americans. We have the right to do this. We will protest. For the most serious possible reason, people were also told not to protest, not to go to any No Kings protests in Minnesota this weekend on Saturday, after news emerged of the political assassinations of a Democratic former House Speaker and her husband, and the attempted assassination of another Democratic state legislator and his wife, and the even more terrible news on Saturday at that time that that assassin was still at large. He has since been brought into custody. But on Saturday, authorities advised everyone in Minnesota to cancel their plans to attend any protest. And that's a very different kind of thing. That is a very, very serious thing. But again, people said no. People went out and protested in Minnesota anyway, despite those warnings, actually in huge numbers. Look, this is St. Paul, Minnesota on Saturday. Look at this. look at how many people went out and protested anyway. And it is not that people didn't know what had happened. You could tell that because a lot of the signs in the crowd were these heartbreaking signs honoring the former Democratic House Speaker in Minnesota, Melissa Hortman, and her husband, who were both killed by that assassin. And even though people were told not to protest in that state that day because the killer was literally still on the loose, apparently there was just nothing that was going to stop people from being there, from standing up, from showing up in huge numbers. And eventually state leaders, I think, realized that there was nothing that they could do to stop people from turning out. Minnesota State Attorney General Keith Ellison decided to go himself. He spoke in St. Paul before that huge crowd. He spoke about his friendship with Speaker Hortman. He spoke about what it felt like to lose her. And he also spoke about the civil rights movement and other martyrs we have had in our country for our democracy.
We owe it to them. We have to do it. We must be there on behalf of the people of this country in this hour when a dictator who wants to be a king is trying to run over the rights of the people. We must be there. We must stand up. We must be strong. We cannot waver. We will not be intimidated. We are not scared of his jail. We are not scared of anything about this guy. We are not afraid, and we will not let fear rule the day. We will not let him weaponize fear against us. And I'm telling you now that he had his goons arrest a senator when he was just trying to ask a question. Senator Padilla, wrongfully treated. He had his other goons prosecute and charge Congresswoman McIver in New Jersey, had him arrest the mayor of New Jersey, threatened to arrest the governor of California and the mayor of Los Angeles. This is the behavior of a dictator. And the only question is, what are we going to do about it?
Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison speaking in St. Paul this weekend. I should tell you, Keith Ellison and also Senator Alex Padilla are both going to be on live tonight in this next hour on MSNBC with Lawrence O'Donnell on The Last Word. So you're gonna want to see that. This hour, we're going to be speaking with Minnesota U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar. I'm sorry to say she was also reportedly on the target list for this assassin who shot these two elected Democratic legislators and their spouses this weekend. Again, that alleged assassin is now in custody. We're going to be speaking with Senator Klobuchar about what's happened in Minnesota tonight, the reaction of the people of Minnesota. I should tell you that Senator Klobuchar was also friends with the murdered House Speaker, Melissa Hortman. Senator Klobuchar had been with her just on Friday before the Speaker was killed on Saturday. So we're going to be speaking live with Senator Klobuchar in just a few minutes. In addition to those huge crowds, despite everything in Minnesota on Saturday, some of the big protests this weekend were really, really big. Huge crowds in Philadelphia, which you see here, which of course was the kind of flagship protest site for the whole country this weekend. I thought the fact that there was going to be a big protest in Philly might have meant a smaller crowd in New York, because they're not too far apart, but nope, I was wrong about that too. Wrong again, Maddow. New York turned out to be huge. In the city of Chicago, protests were also absolutely massive this weekend. In Boston, the Pride Parade was also going on at the same time as the No Kings gathering, the No Kings rally and march in Boston. Even before it was done, local press was crowing that the crowd in Boston was north of 1 million people, and that would really be quite something. I don't know if it was over 1 million people, but that's what local headlines were calling it in Boston. Atlanta had a really, really big crowd. You might have seen some of the footage from Atlanta, Georgia this weekend. You might have seen this at sort of the head of the crowd. They had it spelled out, that big spelled out sign, "Trump must go now." You might have also seen headlines about guys from the Proud Boys, the pro-Trump paramilitary militia group, showing up in the middle of that Atlanta anti-Trump protest. You might have seen headlines about that, but did you actually see how that turned out? I'm going to show you just a few seconds of footage here, and you will get it immediately. It involves tubas and trombones. Just watch this for a second. You will see stuff. There's the Proud Boys and there's the other protesters and the cops standing between them. And you'll see stuff is kind of starting to get tense. Stuff is starting to feel like maybe it's going to boil over. And then, what's that? Hey, tubas to the rescue. Watch. Now, my favorite part about this is that they're just like, this is a very relentless brass band. They just go on and on and on. They're just rocking out. And you can see like some of the Proud Boys are still trying to argue and kind of fight with people. But this brass band is unstoppable. See, like even when they take like a pause, it's just a strategic pause because they're still going. And by the end, nobody can really help themselves. By the end of it, even the Proud Boys themselves are kind of clapping along. By the very end of it, everybody's like kind of basically dancing a little bit despite themselves, which makes it hard to keep up with the fighting. Oh, well, when you're when all else fails, get yourself a trombone and a tuba and a sax player and apply liberally. Solves most problems. But the protests were literally everywhere this weekend. Trump had his little birthday thing in Washington, but then across the country, I mean, organizers and crowd counters say there were somewhere on the order of 5 million people who turned out to say whatever the opposite of happy birthday is to him. I mean, here, let's go top row to bottom row, left to right. Upper left-hand corner, starting there, that's Oklahoma City. Then Los Angeles, huge protest in Los Angeles. Then Kalamazoo, Michigan. Seattle is a really big protest in Seattle. Eugene, Oregon. Boise, Idaho, that's the left side, second row there. Look how huge it is in Boise. Then Kansas City, Missouri, that was another big one. Then Denver. Big one in Indianapolis. They've also had anti-Trump protests outside the NBA Finals in Indy. San Francisco was huge. Austin, Texas was really big. Then it's Anchorage, Alaska. As I said, Chicago, that is next. Huge anti-Trump protests in Chicago. Atlanta with the brass band world peace demonstration and really big numbers. Houston, Texas. Albany, New York. Hello, Cleveland. There's Cleveland there. Charlotte, North Carolina was a very big one. And then second from the right on the bottom row there, that's Little Rock, Arkansas. And then the lower right-hand corner there, that is Miami, Florida. And I'm as impressed by big turnout in big cities as I am by people turning out in smaller places where you would not expect it, and including, you know, some places that I have to look up how to pronounce, and you'll forgive me if I don't get them exactly right, right? Right. Protests, for example, this weekend in Augusta, Maine, also in Baltimore, Maryland, also in Bennington, Vermont. We saw protests in Charlottesville, Virginia, and in Cincinnati, Ohio, in Colony, New York. Columbia, South Carolina got a good crowd. In Dallas, Texas, it was big. We had a big group in Dallas of people dressed out of The Handmaid's Tale. We, the people, were not meant to kneel. This was Des Moines, Iowa. We had a big crowd. Durham, North Carolina had big numbers. We saw protests in Fairfield, California, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. In Freeport, Maine, they were out in the rain. At some points, the pounding rain in Freeport, Maine. This was Frisco, Colorado. Hey, taco, our country is Nacho Kingdom. Here was Golden, Colorado. Here was Greenville, South Carolina. Here was Gunnison, Colorado. Here was Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Here was Guam. Hello, Guam. Guam, the U.S. territory. At this point, the staff of the show is going to kill me. This is like me just pulling random sites out of the F and G and H part of the alphabet. I could go on. Let me put up another 20 box in the hope that this doesn't break the control room. All right, we're going to go top to bottom, left to right, 20 of them. Ready? Here we go. Put it up. Yes. St. Louis at the top left, then Phoenix, then Chattanooga, Tennessee. Then we got another view of Dallas, Texas, Grand Junction, Colorado. Next row, look how big San Diego was. Second row, left side, see that? Then Arlington, Virginia, Buffalo, New York, then Joplin, Missouri. Then there's another look there at Philly, which was so huge. Next row, it's Olympia, Washington. Another look at New York City. That big one I mentioned in Sacramento, California. Another look at St. Paul, Minnesota, with those remarkable circumstances. Then it's Portland, Oregon. Then that bottom row, it's Savannah, Georgia, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Milwaukee was only the biggest of 50 different simultaneous protests in the state of Wisconsin. Then Rapid City, South Dakota. Then it's Springfield, Illinois. And then in the bottom right-hand corner, that is Tampa, Florida. This one's, okay, make a smaller box. Yes, okay. This one's easier to see them one by one. These are anti-Trump protests this weekend. Upper left is Pocatello, Idaho. Tucker, Georgia, then Alton, Illinois, Concord, New Hampshire, Centennial, Colorado, Beaufort, South Carolina. And hold me back, I got a ton of them. They're infinite, honestly. Upper left, that's Alameda, California. I showed you Frisco, Colorado before with the nacho country thing. That was Frisco, Colorado. This is Frisco, Texas. Upper right, that's Rangeley, Maine. Lower level there, lower row, that's Prescott, Arizona, and York, Pennsylvania, and Asheville, North Carolina. Beautiful, resilient little Asheville, North Carolina. Oh, you think we're done? Ha! We're not done. Here's Sitka, Alaska, upper left there, Waterloo, Iowa, Newton, New Jersey, Menifee, I think is how you say it. Forgive me if that's not right. Menifee, California, Clarksville, Tennessee, Huntington, New York, again out in the pouring rain. Did you turn out to protest this weekend in Jacksonville, Alabama? If so, I see you up there in the upper left-hand corner. Hello, Jacksonville, Alabama. Same to you, Staunton, Virginia, and Montpelier, Vermont. I know some people who are up there in Montpelier, Vermont. Eagle River, Wisconsin. Statesville, North Carolina. Bremerton, Washington. This was Phoenix, Arizona. This was a mom there with her daughter. The daughter's sign says, "Leave your MAGA husband." I want to know the whole backstory, and I want to write a TV show about it. This was Austin, Texas, quoting Benjamin Franklin, I believe. Where liberty dwells, there is my country. This was Hillsborough, North Carolina. No Tyrannosaurus Rex. Tyrantos, getting in the king thing with Rex, get it? This was Lexington, Kentucky. First they came for the immigrants, and we said no. New Orleans, Louisiana had a pretty big turnout for their protests this weekend, including this gentleman. "I fought for my country at 19. Now I'm 81 and have to fight my country." This was West Palm Beach, Florida this weekend. Hey, Mar-a-Lago, aren't you nearby? West Palm Beach. This was Santa Monica, California this weekend. Stephen Miller can never come home. Santa Monica is where Stephen Miller is from. This is a group of 90-plus-year-olds in Teaneck, New Jersey, who we've seen protesting for weeks now. They were out in Teaneck this weekend. Another super senior here in Pepper Pike, Ohio. You see her sign there? "In World War II, my brothers fought fascism. Now it's my turn." And on the other end of the age spectrum, here's this young man in Sequim, Washington. "Not my tyrant, not my future." This was Los Angeles, where I mentioned huge protests in Los Angeles. Members of the Russian protest punk band Pussy Riot with this sign, "It's beginning to look a lot like Russia." Essentially a message of warning from the Russian opposition. I mean, we could go on and on, right? From Truckee, California, where there is only one king, and it is definitely Elvis, to Tempe, Arizona, where they packed the overpass, no kings, to Oklahoma City. This one stuck with me. "Not a paid protester, but my senators and representatives are supposed to be. No kings." And like I said, I could go on and on and on. I am leaving out more than I am including by a large measure. When there are more than 2,000 simultaneous protests in the country against the president all at once, it is hard to keep track of them all. It is hard to go through them all on a cable news show. But there have now been so many thousands of protests involving so many millions of Americans. Now I think it's time to start having a national conversation of a different type, right? The strategy and the character of the opposition to Trump is not only self-evident as the most important story in the country, I think it's finally being recognized as the most important story in the country, which is nice. And, you know, you have the president clearly just fundamentally, politically unable to contend with the depth and breadth of feeling against him, right? So these must be paid protesters or invaders from somewhere else, or they must all be violent criminals or whatever. No, actually, this is St. Louis, right? This is America. No kings, yes, queens, right? Like that, this is just us. It's who we are, and this is how we feel about you. I mean, this is Joplin, Missouri. This is Louisville, Kentucky, where thousands of people turned out. This is McHenry, Illinois. This is High Point, North Carolina. It is literally everywhere in this country, Americans in surprising numbers, in surprising places, turning out again and again and again and again to say, no, nope, we are not doing this. You are not taking over our country and turning us into a dictatorship. You are not going to be a king here. And so with all that proof in the pudding, right, with all of that evidence of where we are, it's now sort of time, if we haven't had it already, it is now time to really have a serious national conversation about where this all goes. Because this is not just like the resistance to Trump, right? Like this is the opposition to Trump. This is the other side. And if we're thinking about the two sides of this fight, well, politically, we're at a point where Trump, and I don't mean this in a mean way, but as a political figure, he looks sad and small, right? Nobody came to his $45 million military birthday party. He is a laughingstock on the world stage. He's being treated at the G7 right now like he's Putin's intern. The White House just announced tonight that Trump is coming home early from the G7 meeting tonight after so embarrassing himself there today. I mean, this is a president whose signature economic policy, his supposed tariff policy, is a punchline even among Republicans. I mean, someday, 30 years from now, the whole lecture hall full of Econ 101 students is going to laugh out loud when the professor gets out the chalk and writes taco on the chalkboard and has to explain what the acronym TACO meant in the Trump years for his signature economic policy that he thought would work so well for him, both politically and economically. It is a punchline. I mean, this is a president who appointed a madman to be the nation's health secretary, and who in turn, he has just put like a QAnon conspiracy chat room in charge of the nation's vaccine schedule. This is a president who is selling coins and gold trinkets with his face on them from the White House. This is a president who can't persuade the first lady to live with him. This is a president whose supposed best friend says he should be impeached, and by the way, is in the Epstein files. I mean, this is a president whose approval ratings are more underwater than any other president ever at this point in his term. He has already rushed right to the part where he tries to turn the military against the civilian population, where he tries to turn the force of the American military against the American people. And that is something that neither the military nor the people have an appetite for, and he is going to learn that soon enough. He has rushed right to the end, because he has no idea how to play cards against opposition to him that is this big, this sustainable, this broad, and this correct. He hasn't done anything as president that would win anyone over to his side. And the number of people who voted for him or supported him otherwise, who are now regretting it, grows by the day. And they don't just grow privately, they grow in the headlines every day. Everybody against him is getting stronger and more confident. Everybody with him is starting to get a little worried about how long they can stay with him as they see their numbers dwindle and they see him fail and flail over and over and over again. So for a would-be strongman, he's not strong. He is a remarkably weak and feckless political figure who is nevertheless trying to overthrow the American form of government while pushing incredibly unpopular policies and executing everything incredibly poorly with a laughingstock full of a terribly, terribly staffed administration and cabinet. I mean, who's in the Trump administration who you think like, skills, right? Or you think, popular. Or you think, growing political capital for this president by the day. Honestly. And on the other side, the opposition against him is big, deep, growing, confident, and increasingly unstoppable. And so the question now is efficacy. What does that opposition need to do if it is going to be effective? Their stated goals are to save the republic, to save democracy, to stop this unpopular, weak, feckless president from overthrowing the Constitution and trying to hold power as a dictator. What does the increasingly powerful, increasingly large, buoyant, confident opposition need to be like from here on out? What do they need to do next and going forward in order to maximize their prospects of success? After this weekend's protests by millions of Americans, tonight there was a follow-up phone call to talk strategy and next steps. I don't know if they expected this many, but 60,000 people got on that phone call tonight after the No Kings protests. 60,000 people on one call. So we're going to talk tonight about what we know about what works, about how opposition movements of this size have succeeded or stumbled in the past in this and in other countries. And as I mentioned, we've also got Senator Amy Klobuchar joining us live from Minnesota. There's so much to get to tonight. It's a really big night. It's a really big moment. Stay with us.
There we have it. Hope you enjoyed the Rachel Maddow show of June 16, 2025 as much as I did. See you on the next one, guys. Take care. I ask you guys to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Thank you.